Salutations from space and aloha from Earth. This is Gemini Brett of More Than Astrology, here with Eclipse Astrology number 5, at least in this current run. Share my screen with you really quickly and show you that on YouTube there is a playlist called Eclipse Shadow Play, and you can find Eclipse Astrologies part 1 through 4, where 1 we talk about cosmology, and the 2nd astronomy, and the 3rd a triple eclipse ritual that you can still engage with if you choose, and the 4th a presentation of the astrology of the Cancer solar eclipse, which was a couple weeks ago, the new moon of this particular lunation we are still in, as I am recording on July 26, 2018, the day before this, the total lunar eclipse in the sign of Aquarius. In this particular ephemeris, 4 degrees, 44 minutes Aquarius. That's pretty fun. Very close to the south lunar node at 5:53. Very close to retrograde Mars at 3:58 Aquarius. Super close to black moon Lilith. There's true Lilith at 29 degrees and 22 minutes Capricorn. And the moon very far from Earth, and the Earth is about as far as we get from sun. And this sets up the longest lunar eclipse of the 21st century. And that is happening tomorrow. What does it mean? Well, let's find out. But how can we play with this? How can we open ourselves to it? And what can we see on kind of the global level as we study this chart? What does it mean for us in spirit and soul and matter? So the first video of the series about eclipse cosmology, that's what I get into. And I explain and show some geometry in the sacred geometry tradition. And I can do this with musical harmony as well to explain why, in my own personal cosmology, sun represents the one, the circle of spirit. Moon as the crescent of soul is literally the incarnational device that reflects the one light into an individual experience of one here on Earth. That would be soul on Earth in matter. All right, so watch that video if that stuff intrigues you and you're like, what? Or whatever. Don't. But you'll find that in this eclipse astrology playlist, and eclipse astrology video 1 gets into my own personal connection through the cosmology, which is expanding, and the astronomy of it. We see some of the why we have eclipses and the proximity to the nodes and what the nodes are and this kind of thing. So you can watch those videos, which are already posted. And I will share, let me see. Let me find this thing here. Okay, let's look at this astronomical image for a lunar eclipse. So in the zodiac, in a reality, right? So zodiac is nature. This is moon opposite the sun. Any lunar eclipse, which is a full moon. Any full moon is moon opposite the sun, moon rising at sunset, culminating in the middle of the night, setting at sunrise. Truly that light that, rules the night. And that's not always so with moon, right? I mean, new moon, we don't see moon at all, and it's dark skies all night. The full moon lights the night all night long, unless it turns blood red, right? Which it does in these times when Earth's shadow buries this light of soul that reflects solar spirit, okay? And so this is the general setup, yeah? Thanks to whoever made this incredible image. I think I found it on a free image source site. I'm trying to be more careful about that, or co-create my own. But here is moon in the shadow of Earth. In this cosmology of the 3 parts of the philosophy, or at least the way that I interpret them in the Emerald Tablets, sun is spirit and moon is soul. Well, here is Earth matter coming between the two. We'll see here that lunar eclipses occur anytime a full moon aligns within 12 degrees and 15 minutes, that's 12 1/4 degrees of the zodiac, within either of the lunar nodes. So it's either moon at the south node, which places sun opposite at the north lunar node, or vice versa. And in this case, it is a south node solar eclipse. So the moon is at the south node in Aquarius. Now, if within 3.5 degrees, a total lunar eclipse, and we interrupt this broadcast to look at the chart, and we see that certainly this is the moon within and sun within 3.5 degrees of the nodes, it's 1 degree and 9 minutes, right? So 69 minutes. I mean, super close, right? All right, back here we go. If more than 6 degrees at the bottom of the screen, but less than 12 1/4 degrees from the nodes, and it's going to be a partial lunar eclipse of some sort. There's this magical window between 3.5 degrees and 6 degrees where it could be partial or it could be total. Why? Because moon ain't always the same size. Right. So this is a very cool thing about a lunar eclipse, is that if the moon's in your sky during the eclipse, you see it. This is not true for a solar eclipse. A solar eclipse, because you've got a little thing, you know, coming between the projector, you're the sun, and I'll be the earth, you know, it's not going to eclipse the entire screen, right? You're going to see a dot cruising across the screen. So you have to be in a certain place on Earth to experience the solar eclipse, in a special place within that window to see the total solar eclipse, right? So the sun could be up during the eclipse, but still from where you're looking, the angle has the moon above or below the sun. You have to be within the penumbra to experience some type of eclipse, really within the umbra to see the total solar eclipse, right? Okay, so different for a lunar eclipse. The Earth is much larger than the moon. And the odd thing is it's not too much larger than the moon. The moon is about 1/4 the size of the Earth by diameter. The ratio is actually 3 to 11. And so the Earth's shadow is enough to embrace the entire moon. Even if the alignment of the centers of the three things, right, which is a syzygy, the alignment of the three, isn't exact, right? That would be exactly on the lunar nodes, because the lunar nodes are from the point of view from matter, Earth, where we see the paths of soul and spirit, moon and sun cross. So if a full moon aligns right on the nodes, then we are going to have an incredibly strong total lunar eclipse. But the moon could be a bit above the plane of the shadow projection or below, and still we get a total lunar eclipse because the Earth's shadow is larger than the moon. And it can be exceptionally larger than the moon, or exaggeratedly larger than the moon, than at other times when a couple different things are going down. And we can see one of them in the chart here. We did that this lunar eclipse is close to Black Moon Lilith. Well, what is Black Moon Lilith? The moon's orbit of the Earth, which isn't really how it goes down, but yeah, isn't a circle. And it's because, like all orbiting things, moon and Earth orbit each other. It's an ellipse with two foci. One of them is actually within the Earth's realm, but close to the surface. And the other one is this black moon, it's called, this, focal point of this elliptical orbital dance between Earth and moon, where there's nothing there. But if we look through that place, it projects to what's called the moon apside, or the moon apogee, where in the moon's elliptical path around the Earth, moon is furthest from the Earth. And that is this place here during the total lunar eclipse tomorrow at 2922 Capricorn. So moon is very close. So just before this total lunar eclipse, in fact, about right now, Moon is passing through this furthest place in its orbit. So we say Black Moon Lilith. It's interesting that her name got connected to this piece of nature. And so there's a fun, mythical, and interesting and rich and sometimes tricky mythical place we can engage with Black Moon Lilith. But I prefer to think of it as the far moon, because that's literally what's happening. And the far moon means the small moon, and it means the slow moon. Okay, well, can you see how small is going to set up a longer eclipse? Because we've got a smaller thing for the entirety of the shadow to project itself on, and therefore it's going to take longer for the moon to move through Earth's shadow because it's smaller. And it's going to take longer to move through Earth's shadow because it's slower. Hello, fly. You can't have one without the other, by the way. A far moon is a small moon, is a slow moon. And that we can see in an astrology chart when moon is close to Black Moon Lilith. If moon's at the other side, which some folks who have come to speak about the metaphysical luminaries, Black Moon would be one of them on the opposite side. It's known as Priapus in those communities. And this is where moon is closest to Earth, fastest, largest. Astronomy has come to call this the supermoon, and we love that because an astrologer came up with that term and for our team. But let's please stop taking sides. All right, so what's the opposite? I mean, that's like a micro moon. Okay, now Earth about Sun, also not a circle, okay? So Earth is closest to the Sun in early January, early Capricorn, when the Sun is in early Capricorn. And Earth close to the Sun means what? Means what just happened there? Okay, sorry, I'm having computer freak out a little bit. Actually, operator error. Here you go. So Earth close to the Sun means fast Earth. Yeah, it means big sun. From Earth's point of view, it means fast sun through the zodiac. If the sun moved through the zodiac from Earth's witness at the same rate that it moves every day in early January, if it moved at that rate every day each year, our year would be 12 days shorter. And that Earth closest to sun is called perihelion. At aphelion, which happens in early July, in like a middle range of Cancer, when Earth is furthest from the sun and therefore slowest, and so our experience as sun is literally smaller and slower through the zodiac. If the sun moved at that rate every day of the year, our year would be 12 days longer. Interesting that it's 12. We say the average distance from Earth to Sun is 93 million miles. We actually just say the distance to the Sun is 93 million miles, but that is an average. It changes by plus or minus 1.5 million miles. So Sun is about 91.5 million miles from Earth in early January and about 94.5 million miles from Earth in early July. And here we are, July 27th at this time of the total lunar eclipse, yeah? So not only is Moon small and slow because Moon is close to Lilith, but Earth is furthest from Sun. Okay, so first let's address that astronomically. If Earth is further from the Sun, the shadow, well, you know, the shadow is actually, big crash outside. The shadow, I guess, would be smaller, right? Earth close to Sun would make a larger shadow. So that actually contradicts what I was thinking about this thing. And so it seems this is more about the moon being small, so further covered in Earth's shadow, the moon being slow, moving more slowly through Earth's shadow. And there would be something else here, that the Earth herself, and there from Earth's point of view, because the Earth is moving slow, from our point of view, the sun is moving slow. So we have a slow moon, we have a slow sun, and therefore a longer eclipse. I actually feel like slow moon, fast sun would create the longest eclipses. So I got to get back to the drawing board a little bit on this one. Personally, I know for sure Earth is far from the sun right now. And I can see in the chart that Black Moon Lilith is moon far from Earth. But there's something that's not quite computing for me, because I feel like far moon and then close Earth would create the longest eclipse of the century. So one thing I can see, and this is for sure true, moon's orbit is much more elliptical than Earth's orbit. So moon is going to be kind of the principal participant in this nature of moon speed, moon size being a contributor more effectively to the length of a lunar eclipse. So pardon me for going down a road that actually was not going to get us to a destination that makes sense, but thanks for joining me in the journey. All right. Let me just play cosmologically a little bit in my own cosmology, and I do reserve the right to change my mind and heart tonight. Sun, spirit, the one, moon, soul, the reflection of that one into a unique individual experience. So we here on Earth, matter, can play the game and have growth of healing, feeling, knowing, and give that back through to the one thing. So what is it when moon is at Lilith, the nature of soul, further from matter? And it's interesting, the story of Lilith and the one who chose to leave the garden because of these lame rules. And you know, what was expected of her that did not vibe with what she wanted and such. You know. Is there a sense that that far moon also speaks about the soul that is more connected to the visionary realms, because less interested in embodying and playing the earth game here in matter? And what about when matter is separated from spirit? Well, I mean, some traditions call that Kali Yuga and say it's the time in which we live. But if Earth indeed represents matter and sun spirit, this happens every early July. Usually July 4th. This year was July 6th. Earth at aphelion, far from the sun. Slow Earth, slow sun. Oh, you know what? It does make the shadow bigger, doesn't it? I want to say this, you know, how can we set up a model? Let's just say you're the projector, right? Like if this thing's closer to you, the shadow is going to be larger. But when we're talking about this shadow cast onto something, the closer the thing is to the source and to which its shadow is being projected, the larger the shadow is going to be. Okay, so this is why the longest lunar eclipse of the century. And hopefully you caught up to that, even despite my strange meandering and babble. That the shadow source is closer to what it's covering up. And so it is larger, like Earth's shadow is larger from the moon's perspective. Meanwhile, moon is small, and therefore the shadow covers more of the moon. And long eclipse for you. Okay, so let's look back to the chart and see some of the other amazement of this lunar eclipse. 4 degrees 44 minutes Aquarius, of course, opposite the sun at 4:44 Leo. North node's Leo, south node's Aquarius. It's a south node lunar eclipse. The south lunar node has been in Aquarius, north lunar node in Leo since May 9th, 2017. They move retrograde through the zodiac, spending about a year and a half in each sign, 1.55 years, because their trip around the zodiac retrograde is 18 and a half years, really 18.618. And if you've studied sacred number, that might excite you like it does me. So what else do we see in this eclipse chart? Mercury's retrograde. That happened, began last night. Mercury station retrograde on July 25th, 2018, West Coast time around 10 p.m. The 24th degree of Leo. He will, in the middle of his 3-week retrograde period, align between Earth and Sun on August 8th, and then station direct on August 18th. The solar eclipse that began this thing in the sign of Cancer was August 11th or 12th, depending on where you are. Total lunar eclipse July 27th, and then a partial solar eclipse in Leo on August 11th. So first of all, it wasn't July, I think it's 10th, 11th, July 27th, August 11th. Okay. So within this triple eclipse portal, we have Mercury stationing retrograde. Mercury will square Jupiter 3 times. Jupiter is in the sign of Scorpio, traditionally associated or said to be ruled by Mars. Mars, who is so strongly configured to this lunar eclipse. In modern times, many folks associate Scorpio with Pluto. And the solar eclipse, the first solar eclipse of this triple eclipse season, was exactly opposite Pluto and on Pluto's nodes, 20, 41, and 20. I spoke about that in video 4 of this eclipse series, about an hour into this partial Cancer solar eclipse chart, and specifically looking into this alignment to Pluto and to Pluto's nodes. So if you want to go new school and say Scorpio is plutonic, well, the solar eclipse that began the triple eclipse season, here's the third one, was aligned to Pluto. If you want to go traditional and say Scorpio is Martian, the total lunar eclipse and the longest lunar eclipse of our lifetime, maybe you've actually experienced one that's longer, but of the 21st century, aligned to Mars. So Jupiter's really in on this thing. Now, it's loose, but Jupiter here in the 14th degree of Scorpio is on a square, at least by whole sign, to the lunar nodes, to the moon and Mars in Aquarius and Sun in Leo. Yeah. We see that T square especially configured where to Uranus and Taurus. Uranus ingressed Taurus on May 15th, 2018. He will go back into Aries for some unfinished business. Uranus stations retrograde in August, and he does so before the solar eclipse in Leo of August 11th. You can see in this outer ring, which is that second solar eclipse of this triple eclipse gateway, that Uranus now is retrograde. And at the time of the total lunar eclipse, it's very strongly configured to Uranus. I mean, we're talking, 2 degrees and 14 minutes orb, right? 444 to 230. Mars even more strongly configured to Uranus, and Mars retrograde heading back to perfect that square with Uranus. And by the way, on May 15th, 2018, when Uranus ingressed Taurus for the first time since like the 1930s, right? For Uranus and Taurus. Maybe a bit after that, around them. Mars ingressed Aquarius on the same day, right? And shortly after perfected this square to Uranus, and now Mars, having stationed retrograde, is heading back to align to Uranus again, and we'll make another square. from Aquarius to Taurus. Well, in modern times, though, Aquarius once associated with Saturn traditionally, now with Uranus. And so Mars in Aquarius is probably appreciating some of these teachings from the Uranian being, but in the square, that doesn't necessarily come in so easily. So in a sense, we have a grand fixed square. Sun and North Node in Leo, and Mercury there too. Jupiter in Scorpio. Mars, Moon, South Node in Aquarius, and we see that's where the tight alignment is, right? And then Uranus in Taurus. So, fixed. My mantra for the fixed signs is fix yourself to fix the world, and I feel this, they do this according to the element of their kind, that Taurus and the earth of the body and the senses, that Leo in the fire of the will, intuition, that Scorpio and the water of the feelings and the heart, and that Aquarius and the air of the intellect, thought. Expanding consciousness for the sake of consciousness expansion, but doing it here, know thyself, to expand the mind of all that is. Scorpio is the art of the heart. If I express authentically, I manifest a realm of authentic expression. Leo in the fire, if I choose burning, roaring flame of self-love, filling myself with my light, I create space for this to be the scene in the world. This is not selfish, it's not arrogant. Fix myself to fix the world. These fixed signs are signs of personal power, and therefore they are the ones most muted by conformity culture that would say staying small is the pathway to equality. I say we all be as big as we can be and equal in that way. And choosing to be in our place of personal power creates a powerful creation and expression of world in the mirror without. Taurus, fix yourself to fix the world in the way of the body, the flower, the fruit that wants to be smelled and pollinated. So necessary for the tree being, learning the beauty of self and bringing that beauty to the world, seeing the beauty in the world, a tricky thing to do, but not so much when you just take a walk in the trees, to know our beauty. Yeah. And as above, so below, as within, so without, we are the world. So this is not a selfish thing. Yeah. Coming into our own personal power. It's so alive in this eclipse. And you know, Mars, who's retrograde in Aquarius, now anytime a full moon aligns to a planet, it's going to be the middle of that planet's retrograde period. Why? Because a full moon means moon opposite sun. So if a full moon's with a planet, first of all, it can't be Venus or Mercury, right? Because full moon means moon on the opposite side of Earth from the sun, and Mercury and Venus can never do that, yeah? So a full moon conjoined a planet means full moon conjunct Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Eris, Maki, Haumea, the asteroids, centaurs, whatever, right? And that will always be during that planet's retrograde period and the middle of the retrograde period, because it is sun opposite that planet. So here's Earth, and here's the sun, currently Leo, and here's Mars in Aquarius, because Earth is passing Mars by. So a retrograde, no matter if it's an interior decorator, Mercury and Venus, who are passing Earth during their retrograde periods, as it is true for Mercury now, or for the outer planets, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, beyond, where the retrograde is happening because Earth is passing them, just like the optical illusion that we experience when we pass a car on the highway. Regardless of planet, for all planets, this is true in the very middle of their retrograde period. For Mercury, 3 months, for Venus, 40 days and 40 nights, for Mars, about 2 months, for Jupiter, 4, etc. You know, this always means when they are in the middle of their retrograde that they are closest to Earth. For the outer planets, Mars and beyond, it will always mean that it is sun opposite that planet. So in this case, sun opposite Mars. the moon is an outer planet at full moon, or an inner planet at new moon. It's the only being that can do that, right? For Venus and Mercury, it's one of their two types of conjunctions with Sun when they are in the middle of their retrograde. And we don't want to necessarily go right there right now, but what I can say is at the middle of any planet's retrograde period is the time when they are perigee, closest to Earth. So Moon is far from Earth right now. Why? Because Moon's with Lilith. Mars is very close to the Earth right now because Earth is passing Mars by. And this happens every 780 days. It's about 24 months. It's really average to be 25 because the window is within 24 to 26 months. And let's call it 2 years. Let's call it 24 months. So in that time, Mars would be direct for 22 months and then retrograde for 2 months. In the time of Earth and Mars being closest, it's not always exact because Mars's orbit is so crazy, elliptical, eccentric, weird. Why? Because something crashed into Mars some time ago, or something maybe exploded on Mars, or let's just stop there for now. Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we should get all sorts of strangely mystical. Okay, that happened. So here's Earth passing Mars by, Mars and Earth close. Mars retrograde, the middle of these 2 months. And it's Mars's fastest retrograde period because when Mars shifts from drive to reverse, which happens as Earth begins to pass Mars, Mars is stopped. You got to put it in park, right? And then he accelerates backwards until this point, which is now. And then starts slowing down, decelerating, but still backwards until the station, direct, park, and now we go and drive. So the apogee, the perigee, the closest place of this planet and Earth happens in the middle of the planet's retrograde. And what is that for Earth to be close to Mars? What is Earth? What is Mars? Earth, I will say, where we have our experience in matter, the so-called real world. That doesn't mean Mars isn't part of nature, but it's a different space. Mars, I love to say, is the exhale. Venus, the inhale. We draw spirit over matter between us and the light, at least in her orbital path, breathing the sun into us. Mercury has his function before it gets to her for her role, Venus. And then Mars, the first one on the way out, at least the orbital path. Yeah. So inhale, exhale. Hopefully a bit of a death in the breath between to really get present and centered with where we are. Yeah. But I love seeing Venus and Mars in that way. We associate them often with Venus as the divine feminine and Mars as the sacred masculine. And so that opens up some contemplations of that. What is Mars in Aquarius? So first of all, Earth and Mars are like merging. That's a weird thing about these retrogrades. We'd like to have Mars be Mars and Earth be Earth. Mars has a bad rap, right? Astrologically speaking, this malefic, especially if you're born by day in the Hellenistic tradition. Mars is of the night sex, of the malefic, contrary to the sect in favor for those of you born with the sun above the horizon. Why that rap? Why in so many global traditions is Mars seen with different names as some warrior with a scarred face? And if you know about the body of Mars, there's a huge scar, many, many times the size of Grand Canyon here on Earth. Half of Mars is much closer, is much lower in altitude than the other half. I mean, it very much seems like something like Mars blew up at some point, or something happened there. It seems like it was once probably a serious water planet and most likely therefore a life-bearing planet. Might still be, but something happened on Mars that was very chaotic. And I'll say probably at the same time something happened on Earth. Let's leave that there for now. Though I do feel that Mars being retrograde, which brings us back to the old, that Mars being so close with Earth which opens the gateway for information exchange, possibly. If you and I are speaking to each other across the room, we're losing a lot of the information that's happening up close, where we get to watch what the eyebrows do and subliminally and subconsciously process and all that. Yeah. There's a tension. There's a tension. Why? And we see it astrologically of Sun opposite Mars and the opposition. You know, I started with this idea of the, some of you won't hear this because it was before I hit record, but of the tritone. These days we just call it the blues note, but there's a rumor that it was once called the devil's chord and not allowed, and that associates and maps, at least the way that I play musically, to the opposition, which is known traditionally as the Saturnian aspect. So we say it's one of the hard aspects in astrology. I want to be careful with that language, but that's what's said, and there's a reason for this. I love to say it can pull you apart and put you together, and either way, the focus is here in the center and the heart. If we get the point of the thing, it's always going to show us two archetypes who are on the opposite sides, because these 12 signs are actually 6 pairs, polarities. So what is the one thing that Leo and Aquarius are the opposite sides of, right? Hot and cold are both temperature. Leo and Aquarius are both, I'll say, creation. Leo, inspiration from the fires within. Aquarius, imagination, the antenna that connects us with the collective, and we create together to change this world. And Mars wants that to happen quickly, you know? And one of Mars's functions alchemically is separation. Mars known as hot and dry by temperament. Mars excites things. Hot excites things, and dry separates things. There's dry and moist, right? Hot brings it up, cold brings it down. Excites or chills it out. Dry like sand separates, and moist like mud connects. It's an interesting study of planets, you know, like Jupiter is associated with the air temperament of hot and moist, and Mars with the fire temperament of hot and dry. And Mars, traditionally, at least in the alchemical signatures in the sevenfold way, often associated with the third process called separation. The first, calcination, the burning to the bare bones, associated with Saturn. And then the moon comes in for dissolution, where we flood the burned matter to retrieve the salts. The spirit has already been separated, and now we have to find the salts in the burnt matter to recombine, solvate, coagulate, break apart, and put back together. So we flood the burnt matter, and we lose our minds and enter the place of the watery dream and the realms of archetypes. It's like this moon thing in the ways of old. And then, having retrieved what is us and seeing some things that are not us, and that was part of the purpose of the burning in the first place, we can now separate, which is actually known as a function of air, but also often shown as a function of Mars. And here we have Mars in an air sign. Aquarius. What is Aquarius? Let's change this world. Let's bring the revolution. Aquarius opposite Leo, the revolutionary, the royalty. That's who we revolt against. This, if we are good in our royal way, we don't need revolution. It's a great impetus of amazing change and creation. The revolutionary wants it done now. But the revolution will not be televised unless it is beautiful. And these are the words from Uranus and Taurus. Mars is looking there right now. It says, make it a revolution of beauty. Taurus, slow down, stop, and smell the roses. Simplify. Find self. Fix yourself to fix the world. So these are the words of the Oracle first. Know thyself. If you want to know the mind of all that is, and this is an Aquarian gig. And this is why astrology and Aquarius and astrology and Uranus, you know, bedmates, because here we are entering through this amazing poetic breath of nature, the opportunity to connect with the mind of something higher. But if we really want to know what that is, first know thyself. If we really want to bring the revolution, first receive the revelation. So Mars doesn't like slow, does he? Does Aquarius like slow? No. Aquarius is the highest ethers. You know, the air is low pressure. We bring planes up there so they can fly fast without resistance. Aquarius wants change now and for the whole world and for a beautiful reason. But that revolution, how often are we committed to causes that go nowhere and shouldn't because we haven't waited to see, are they aligned to what we wish? We say, impeach him, impeach him. Okay, what's next? I don't care, get him out of there. What do you mean? Have the vision and then bring the revolution and make it something beautiful. The revolution won't be televised because it's not worth watching, because these bloody revolutions are bloody. I love that every time I just search Buckminster quote, you get this quote by Buckminster Fuller. Genius. You never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. We receive the vision, the revelation, which only happens when we can slow down. Don't worry about opening everyone's eyes. Close your own. Remember the dream, rest. So Mars might not like it slow, but if we can allow that part of us that wants to exhale, that wants to bring change, that wants to create and manifest, and we do, if we can bring that into center and learn how to fix it, then it will be a powerful thing. So I love to say this about Aquarius in general. It's a mouthful or a mindful, but stage one, the hermit in the cave, meditating to the point of rainbow body astral projection into the galactic Netherlandia, eagle-eye overview of all that is. Through my own awareness of self and my expansion of my consciousness, I will connect to higher consciousness and the one thing. And there I receive the revolution and revelation and shift into stage two, the revolution. The change agent, the mad scientist who, like Prometheus, stole fire from the heavens to change the world and see this revolution in a good way, in the love of all that is in humanity. But if we disconnect from self, we disconnect from the heart. There's this thing that's said, right, about Aquarius shadow of a love for humanity and a hatred for human. It's extreme, but it's an interesting thing to play with. And some will look at the Aquarius Leo gig as Leo, the heart, sun, associated medically, the traditions with the heart and astrologically with Leo, and Aquarius, the head. But, you know, Aquarius associated traditionally and medically with the shins. So why don't we say the head, the heart, and the shins? Yeah, I will say that Jupiter and Scorpio, for me, that is the art of the heart and the first eclipse of this triple eclipse season in Cancer. The science of the heart, the science of the waters. There's a lot of heart involved here. And we are looking at the heart and the head. And I'll say also the head and the feet. And I think this is part of Pluto and Capricorn, much more visibly so, Saturn and Capricorn at this time. Ground, Uranus and Taurus. Venus and Virgo, right? There's a lot of Earth on this total lunar eclipse chart. We see that Venus is trine Pluto. We see that Uranus is receiving the trine from Saturn. And They are both applying and very strong, as I hope you can see here. Saturn 347 Capricorn retrograde, so heading backwards as Uranus is moving forward to connect this perfect trine from Capricorn, where Saturn lives, to Taurus, where Uranus lives. And you know what? It won't perfect, because Uranus is going to station retrograde and Saturn's going to station direct before they align perfectly. But it's very strong. It's in the stew, y'all. Venus trine Pluto, and that certainly will perfect in very shortly after this longest lunar eclipse of the 21st century. Venus, who's her last aspect, she most recently gave a sextile to Jupiter. Well, the moon might have something to say about that, but if we take the moon out of the mix, Venus sextile Jupiter, and carrying that conversation now to a trine with Pluto, and preparing the space for Jupiter to sextile Pluto once again. There's magical things happening here, and to bring it back to reality, let's actually stop the screen share and not get so lost in the chart and bring it back through the art into the heart. Earth, body, senses, sentience, experience, real world, stuff we can touch, the monkey suit, slowing down, finding the grace of Earth's pace, releasing the rat race. And so it's actually a gift that Mercury just stationed, slowing down this. Mars is stationed, slowing down this, you know, Mars retrograde anyway, moving slowly backwards, even though it's the fastest point right now of Mars's backward motion. There's only one gear in reverse, right? Many 22 months to 24 for Mars direct, so he gets pretty quick, right? And only 2 months retrograde, so pretty slow in reverse. So even though this is the fastest reverse time for Mars from Earth's point of view, at perigee, Earth and Mars close, Earth passing Mars by, the middle of Mars is retrograde, it's a slow thing, and it's a backwards thing. And Jupiter is recently stationed direct after his, you know, from May 9th to around solstice time, June solstice time. Sorry, March 9th. So now actually it was more around that eclipse, right? Jupiter about a 4-month retrograde, 10-degree retrograde. So Jupiter's moving slowly, Saturn's preparing to station, Saturn's moving slowly. Things are slowed down in the longest lunar eclipse of the 21st century, which means a slow thing. Which is fantastic because eclipses by their very nature have a quickening. Right? In the lunar eclipse, we see all the potential phases of the moon during a month. We don't see the perfect half moon, the squares, right? But we see all the different crescents and gibbous moons of a month within the period of hours. A month into hours, we see no stars and the full moon eating the sky, and then suddenly the light dims and becomes blood red, and the Milky Way pops out of here in dark sky space, and we see basically a month worth, because all the stars are out at new moon and none of the stars are out at full moon. Most some are, right? But that kind of cyclical nature, taking a month soul into hours, I mean, less than a day matter. So there's a quickening. But it's a triple solar eclipse because Earth is moving slowly, and therefore, from our point of view, Sun is moving slowly. We have these retrograde things happening. We have a lot of Earth in the signature, and it says, slow down, center. Be in that space where we can hermit in the cave and know thyself to expand consciousness and bring true change and revolution seated in revelation, rather than just grabbing a gun and jumping straight to the thing or the picket signs, or, you know, like, wait, before I even consider, is this actually the movement that I want to give my energy to? Is it something that speaks? Is it something that will actually bring a shift, or am I just finding a place to give my energy? am I just going to watch flat earth videos all day because they have conspiracy theory music, which gets me all hot so I can resist the programming of our shady science and the contamination culture of scholastic shenanigans, you know? Right. So drink some tea. Smell the roses and play a jam. It's a hard thing to do. The triple eclipse, the last of them, the solar eclipse in Leo, is ending up in my fourth house, and the house of house and home and family. And I'm choosing to eclipse my home, either rent out or sell my house and move back to California. Mercury's retrograde in my fourth house, and so going back, right? Mars is retrograde in my ninth house. I'm going to go have a vision quest to see him and do some learning in this higher art called astrology and some teaching, kind of ninth house themes. In Sedona, probably more ninth house if I was going to Crete, you know. I last moved back to California 18 years ago, which is an eclipse Saros cycle. It's the last time these triple eclipses of this family were around. In Cancer, Capricorn, Leo, and that's, I think, a tale for another time. Anytime we have a triple eclipse, it's one solar eclipse family, and they last on average for 1,280 years, 1,260 years, coming around every 18 years, 11 days, 8 hours. Let's call that 18 years. That's the heartbeat of the eclipse family, the breath. One of these eclipse families, in particular the one that belongs to the Cancer's partial solar eclipse, has been around since the 8th century and will last until 2054. And the Leo partial solar eclipse in a couple weeks' time is the family that has come to take the place of the one that is now going away. And it showed up in 1928. So every 18 years, they travel together in this triple eclipse happening, right? So this happened last in 2000, in 1982. We can take that back to 1928. We can take that forward to 2054, stopping at 2036 on the way. If you've studied eclipses, 18, 2018, 36, 2036, 54, 2054, these are amazing eclipse numbers. There's something about this cycle. But from 1928 to 2054, there's these two cycles that are traveling together. It's like the baton is being passed, and the image that I really have for it is it's like the time where, the elder of the tribe who holds the wisdom is now bringing the apprentice in because they are about to transition, maybe in this case, achieve rainbow body and transcend. And let's make sure that the student receives the codes of the ways that we keep the shamanic wisdom alive for the 7 future generations and prepare them to know how to do this transfer when it's their time and all that. Yeah. Something that has been around for a long time, since the 8th century, is now, and it started in 1928. The replacement has arrived, and they travel together in training before one's allowed to transcend 2054, and the other will carry on. South node eclipse is actually, it's a north node eclipse. I just got this wrong in that EA Zoom meetings I just recorded that will find its way to YouTube soon as well. The solar eclipses are north node eclipses. And so north node eclipses start at the north pole of Earth and snake around and end at the south pole. And so that's true of the Cancer solar eclipse. It's in its ending stages down at the south pole of Earth. And the Leo solar eclipse that's come to replace it, it's a north node eclipse that's just begun at the north pole. And then over 1,260 years on average for a cycle, it will snake its way down and around and end at the south pole and replace a new one up there, and it's an amazing thing. Study eclipses, it's endless. It's absolutely heart-blowing, heart-opening, mind-blowing. That's what we want now. Heart-opening. Let's not say mind-blowing, mind-expanding, controlling our thought, our consciousness, the expression of the heart, not suppressing it to allow the suppressed to control us, but expressing and controlling the expressed to serve us, says Jupiter in Scorpio. Coming into bringing a more conscious Uranus expanded experience, revolutionary experience of the body and the dance and the sensuality, says Uranus in Taurus. Mars in Aquarius says change it, everything now, right? Yet everybody else is like, chill out, dude. And he is slow and backwards. And yet the longest lunar eclipse of the 21st century, aligning to Mars in this amazing way. Mercury and Leo, who will square Jupiter, Scorpio thrice. The only planet that he performs the same aspect with 3 times in this current retrograde cycle that began July 25th and reaches Cazimi on August 8th and Mercury station direct on August 18th. 3 squares with Scorpio, Jupiter from Leo, Mercury, and there's things about head and heart involved in that too, in a beautiful way. And there's things about creation and art and living our life like art and passionately. And seeing that these pleasures and these pains and these amazing sources of growth and is rooted in both of those realms. It's on this canvas of our life's experience. It is our art. And Mars and Aquarius wants that change, and we say, slow down. And yet, in Mars's reality, Mars is moving super fast. Do you know why it's so rare for Mars to be retrograde in Aquarius? The last time was 1971. Because Mars moves most quickly in Aquarius, actually late Aquarius and early Pisces. Mars is perihelion, where Mars in his freaky elliptical orbit is closest to the sun. Perihelion is about 6 degrees and change Pisces. Aphelion, Mars furthest from the sun, 6 degrees and change Virgo. Okay, so when Mars is in Virgo, Mars is slow. When Mars is in Pisces, Mars is fast. In early Pisces, which, you know, we can look at Aquarius, Pisces, and Aries, especially for Mars's fastest signs, and Leo, Virgo, Libra for Mars's slowest signs. Now, this is Mars in his orbit, and it definitely shows up in the way that we experience Mars and Earth, Mars, Sun in their synodic cycle, which is about 2 years long. But from Earth's point of view, it's more about the perigee, Earth passing Mars, Earth and Mars very close, combining these energies. The apogee, Earth on the other side of Sun from Mars. So what is that? That's a Sun-Mars conjunction that happened 1 year ago, July 27th, 2017, in these same degrees of Leo, where the Sun is for this total lunar eclipse. And here a year later, Sun has now opposed Mars for the middle of Mars's retrograde, apogee, Mars and Earth closest to one another. And Mars happens to be doing this, or Earth is activating this, with Mars in a space where he's closest to the sun, perihelion. So Mars is fastest there, and therefore it is harder for Earth to catch up and pass Mars by. Mars-Sun synodic cycle, the longest, because from Earth's point of view, Mars and Sun are moving at the most similar rates of all planets considered in comparison to the Sun. I'll say outer planets. And that's because Earth and Mars have a similar thing going down. Neighbors. Now Mars is close to Sun in this freaky elliptical orbit that changes by much more than 1.5 million miles. Did I share that here or many other videos I've recorded today? Let's do that. Yeah, I didn't. We say sun is 93 million miles from the Earth, true on average. In early January, Earth is closest to the sun, Earth's perihelion, and the sun is 1.5 million miles closer to the Earth, 91.5 million miles away. And that means Earth is faster, or from Earth's point of view, sun is faster. If sun had that rate through the zodiac, the year would be 12 days shorter. And in early July, Earth is at aphelion, furthest from the sun. Oh wait, we did say this. I did say this. I'll just finish anyway, in case you just tuned in or whatever. And the year would be 12 days longer if the sun moved through the zodiac at the daily rate that's happening in early July. Well, we're close to that, right? So right now, Earth is slow, Mars is fast. Can you dig how it's trickier for Earth to pass Mars by? It also, Earth further from sun, that means closer to Mars. Mars closest to sun, that means closest to Earth. So it is about as close as Earth and Mars can get. The closest since 2003, which isn't that long ago, but 2003 was the closest Earth-Mars relation since 60,000 years before. Some are saying 70,000. We get that big, and the truth that well, I'll just leave that there. A long, long time. More tea. So it's an amazing thing right now that actually Earth at aphelion, far from sun, Mars near perihelion, close to sun, brings Earth and Mars closer. But 2003, though this happened with Mars in the middle of retrograde, so Earth passing Mars by, so Mars apogee there, Mars and sun were opposite, with sun in early Virgo and Mars right at early Pisces, perihelion close to sun. Earth was a little further from the aphelion in the Earth cycle, which is, early second decan Cancer, at least when the sun's early second decan Cancer, early July. But we see that Mars is the one that actually has the greater contribution to this variation, because Earth's orbit is much more like that than Mars is. So freaky ellipse for Mars. So 2003 was even closer than this one, but this one is super close. I have not yet looked into the future to see when the next very tight proximity for Earth and Mars are, but you can see it. How? Go look at Mars. And Mars's opposition to sun is right now. And where I'm recording in Seattle right now, the sun is setting. That means what? Mars is rising. And the moon's almost full, so the moon will chase Mars up. And then tomorrow, at the exact full moon, which is happening midday where I live in Seattle, so no lunar eclipse for me, but for most of the world, the opportunity to see this lunar eclipse, I'll show you where it goes down. We see in the chart here what? That the moon is right on top of Mars. I want to say one more thing before we go into that. Let's bring in Vesta, who's currently in Sagittarius. Look at that trine with Mercury. So if we consider the asteroid goddesses, Vesta now considered a dwarf planet. Mercury will also trine Vesta thrice in this retrograde period. Pallas Athena, Leo, in the mix. In wider orbs, but she's kind of bringing Jupiter in, you see. She was born from his head, wasn't she? All right. Juno, Taurus, opposite Jupiter. I mean, if you know the myths, at least the ones that have survived, or perhaps were perpetuated by patriarchy, of Hera and Zeus, or Juno and Jupiter, the Taurus-Scorpio opposition hosting these two is pretty relevant. And there's a lot of talk here about spirit and flesh. Ceres, Virgo, trine, Juno. sextile, Jupiter. See a lot, even more of Earth coming into the scene. We can play all day. I mean, add points and add points. I'm actually going to take these away just because. Well, you know what? Let me bring them in, and I will do this thing. And this way, you can see all these glyphs here. You can take a screenshot if you'd like to see this total lunar eclipse chart. With more of these bodies that we look at, and some call these the 4 primary asteroids in the belt between Mars and Jupiter, because they were the first 4 discovered. 2 of them are the largest, and those are Ceres and Vesta. And Vesta is the brightest, actually apparent with the naked eye once a year, and I've been initiated. Anyway, so there you go. This, by the way, is only playing with, I think, the planets out to Pluto. All right, let me close that. And for now, we will take these asteroids away because we know things get pretty cluttered. And there's 100,000 asteroids plus that have been since tracked. So a lot of people really play with them. I think that's beautiful. This wedge. So Moon, South Node, Mars, Sun, North Node, Aquarius, Leo, respectively, for those groupings. Sun, North Node, Trine, Aries, Chiron, and Moon, Mars, South Node, Sextile, Aries, Chiron. That's called the wedge. It's almost a kite, but we would need some business in early Sagittarius to complete the kite. So we would have a grand fire trine with Chiron and Aries and Sun and Leo, something in early Sag. The spark, the roaring flame, and the smoke that carries the spark to keep the fire triangle complete. And somehow Mars here, a very fiery being, you know, living in this Aquarius place. In this wedge, it's a very interesting geometry. So Chiron's telling us, I mean, in early Aries, and first of all, if you know the story of Chiron and Prometheus, and Chiron chose to take Prometheus' place in this deep state of torture when Chiron himself had experienced this excruciating wound that would never be healed. And why should 2 of them suffer forever when only one had to? And so I will take his place. And this gift of compassion and empathy was honored through the release of Prometheus and Chiron not being forced to take his place, but rather stationed in the heavens as Centaurus. Later we say Sagittarius, actually, constellationally speaking. So Chiron ingressing Aries, you know, over the equinox, the world point, the beginning of the end of the beginning of again, it took Uranus's place. Uranus has been in Aries 7 years plus, and now Chiron says, as Uranus ingresses Taurus, Chiron, I will take your place. You know, come across that world point when Uranus did Fukushima. There's a lot of that alive right now. There's a lot of the flood alive right now, the deluge, the truth of catastrophes and cataclysms that have happened on Earth in the past, the turning of the ages. I really refer you to the great work of Randall Carlson. Check out his Cycles of Catastrophe on YouTube. Brilliant presentation about comets and such. There's a lot of this alive in the Taurus-Uranus situation, the mythos of Gaia and Uranus. And I'm going to leave that there for now. I will say that Mars retrograde here in Aquarius is going to perfect this sextile with Chiron soon. I believe in the square with Uranus. Actually, let's look at that. I'm going to open Intrepid software, which just kind of lets me zoom around a little bit. And let's clear out some of these asteroids and Eris for now. And this is the total lunar eclipse in Giza, Great Pyramid style. This is Lilith, by the way, with a strange glyph. And I want to see, does Mars square Uranus from Aquarius to Taurus? And the answer is yes on August 1st. So within the triple eclipse window, 2 degrees 33 minutes. And does Mars come back to sextile Chiron before Chiron regresses from Aries to Pisces, going from the beginning to the end of the beginning of the end of the beginning again. And I'm pretty sure the answer is certainly yes. And that date is August 3rd, shortly thereafter. Check that out, with the moon at Uranus that day. And traditionally speaking, carrying the light of Mars to the sun. No, carrying the light of Mars to Saturn, which is actually in the traditional tip an amazing thing. I'll have to record a video about that another time. All right. So yeah, these aspects of Mars sextile Chiron and Mars square Uranus, they do perfect, you know? I mean, that was an old Hellenistic idea of whether an aspect is separating or applying, and if applying, will it become perfect before either planet leaves the sign? And if so, it's much more of an aspect than the other ones would be. And that is true for both Mars Chiron by sextile and Mars Uranus by square. The Sun Mars thing has already happened before this. Moon, through the translation of light, is actually in this moment carrying Mars to the sun, keeping that love alive, if that's what it is. And in the chart, it sure as heck looks like Moon is like right on top of Mars. I mean, Mars is this big right now, extra big because of all that proximity stuff I was talking about earlier. If you've sat with me and drank astrology and had a journey through your own soul song the way that I do it, you usually hear somewhere in the quest, hey, make sure you go out and make eyes with Jupiter tonight. He's right on your Venus. Or make sure in the next couple of months you connect with Mars. He's transiting your moon or whatever, you know? And I get wonderful emails. Oh, wow, I went to Jupiter and oh my gosh, all these things happen and I can't believe it. It's like planet or people too. And yeah, I was like, yeah, I know, it's so cool. And then I get these emails or more like phone calls. Bro, Mars is too intense. Like, oh, right. So powerful. And right now, so amazing. This beaming bright red, you know, orange. So let me show you a couple things. Let me stop my share so I can share it again with my computer sound. And before I do, I have to find a file real quick. So please excuse me from my Sacred Astronomy video course. There should be something that says videos, and then we do this. Geo Helio Dumas. Oh no, not that one. Sorry, folks. Things are happening over here on my end. What am I looking for? Oh, right. So the Mars retro loop. Okay, so let me share my screen and mute my own mic. We'll listen to the amazing flute of John Dumas, a serious Aquarian who offers great musical medicine. You can find him at John Dumas, JohnDumas.com. I will mute this mic so you don't hear a double flute and stop my video and share this thing. And we're going to look at Mars's current retrograde loop. And we're back. Okay. So if you're perceptive and you know how the chart and the sky correspond, you saw that Mars dove from northern to southern latitudes right at the Capricorn solstice degree. You saw that Mars aligned very strongly with Jupiter and dove, south of Saturn, and that this loop is an extreme southern latitude. Mars is extremely out of bounds right now. I woke up with this term in my mind 2 days ago that I'm actually going to start creating around called extra lunar, which would be more an expression of extreme latitude, where out of bounds is a suggestion of extreme declination, but that's limited to signs near the solstices, and that's not for our share right now. But extra lunar, so you'll probably be hearing more about that from me. I think it's going to be one of the things that I bring to a conversation I'll have, or a presentation I'll have with Adam Ellenboss's Nightlight Astrology group, which is happening July 31st. So I hope you'll check that out. I'll link that at my Facebook page, Brett Joseph, or at my Facebook page, Arts of the Chart. And hope you can join me there. I think it's a donation thing. I'm going to speak about the uniqueness of the moon and get into these things like lunar size and speed and latitude and declination. And we're going to play with the emerald tablets of Hermes more. All right, so let me show another happening here, because, again, in the chart, it just looks like Moon and Mars are right on top of each other. And as big as Mars and bright as Mars is right now, can't play with the moon, a full moon, right, friends? So Mars is actually, brightest, closest, like now in the next few days. And yet it's full moon time. And so we don't see such a bright Mars. In a couple weeks, in the darkness of the moon, the dark moon, Mars will be even brighter, right? Even though not as close with Earth. Let's go over, oh, that's not what we want. Let's go to, we'll go to Giza, where I cast that chart. You know what? I'm actually, something's been weird lately. So I'm just going to go, here's like close by. We'll go to Adja, Egypt. That sounds very cool. Anyway, and here, we're just hours away from this eclipse. So really this looks like this, right? The sun is up right now, about 6 a.m. in Egypt, where we are looking in this location. And we'll cruise by hours. And we'll get to sunset. And whoops. Buttons. And it's a full moon. So what? Full moon rises at sunset. And it's Sun-Mars opposition. So Mars rises at sunset. And there they are. And as we move through time, and let's zoom in on these beings. First of all, what do you notice? They aren't anywhere close. Moon is on the ecliptic, which is the Earth-Sun plane, because Moon is at one of her nodes. It's actually her southern node, right? Moving from northern latitudes to southern latitudes, and on the plane, and therefore we can have an eclipse, right? Mars is way down here, basically at its bending, as far from the nodes between the south node, which for Mars right now, let's see, we can see it somewhere here. Maybe that's, where is it? Somewhere here around Porima, about 10 degrees, tropical Libra. Geocentric south node of Mars right now, if you speak that language. But either way, Mars is very far from Moon, or Moon is very far from Mars. In the chart, it's like, wow, Moon is going to occult Mars and eclipse Mars. No, because Mars has extreme southern latitude right now. So let's move through time, and I see if I can zoom in on them a little bit more. Okay, cool. And I think Stellarium, wonderful software, will actually show us this darkening of the moon. Check that out, right? I wonder if it will even show us. Let me take the art away here. I wonder if it will show us some rewinding time. We'll bring the moon back into its full moonlight. That as the moon darkens, more stars come out. We're not seeing that. We're not seeing that. But believe me, it's true. If you've ever experienced a total lunar eclipse, it's one of the coolest things about total lunar eclipse. And this is a long one, and then the light returns, right? So we're not seeing the greatest example of this. But now check this out. Because this is Sun, Earth, Moon, Mars. And they're not totally aligned. Sun, Earth, and Moon are very closely. And that's the Sun and the Moon being so close to the lunar nodes. We see the Moon and how close the Moon is to the ecliptic plane. Syzygy, the alignment of the three things and the three parts of the philosophy of the whole world. As Hermes Trismegistus, I believe, speaks of matter, soul, and spirit, of Earth, Moon, and Sun. Moon is so bright that it's actually dimming this brightest Mars. And then the shadow of Earth comes to blanket the moon. And Moon herself will turn blood red or really kind of orange. She'll be the same color as Mars. I'm so stoked to see photos of this from the other side of the world. And as Moon dims, Mars brightens. As does Antares over here, and Saturn, and Jupiter, and Zubinil, Shamali, and, Graphius, and all these beings, right? So, okay, enough of that for now. Not only is this the longest total lunar eclipse of the 21st century, but it is entirely rare for Mars to retrograde in Aquarius. Why? Because in early Pisces is where Mars moves most quickly. So Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, especially late Aquarius and early Pisces would be these places where Mars is so fast that it's hard for Earth to pass Mars by. And given that that always will happen with Sun opposite Mars, and that means Sun in the sign of Leo, well, it is Cancer not far away when the Sun is there, that Earth is furthest from the Sun, so Earth is slowest, Mars is fastest. Can you see how impossible that passing is? And yet it is happening now for the first time since 1971. Longest total lunar eclipse of the century, rare for Mars to retrograde in Aquarius. Can you imagine, therefore, how rare it is for a total lunar eclipse to align to Aquarius Mars? It'd be more rare for a total lunar eclipse to align to Leo Mars. It'd be impossible. But right, so Aquarius Mars, the Moon and Mars, The rarity of the thing, I feel, also helps us with this energy of awe, wonder, which really, more than anything else, should stop us in our tracks, encourage us to slow down, ground. Mars is rising right now, by the way, and there's all these dogs barking. I put up one of the videos I put up is like a 10-minute video of an eclipse ritual that I'll be performing tomorrow that I've been working through for the last couple of weeks, actually. And if you feel like there's something you want to do, you can tune into that. Taking my own advice. We want change now. We have this feeling that if things don't change immediately, we will all die. The warrior of awakening says, open your eyes before the thing falls apart, like it did long ago when the comet came, or we got too technology out of our bodies and whatever, pushed the button and things fell apart, or, hubris, etc. And so the flood came. And I'll tell you, I don't want to speak that woo, but all these things are alive. I'll even say the word Atlantis. Okay, an old word, an old name for Earth, I'm convinced. But anyway, I'll leave that there for now. Old wounds are coming to the surface, deep, cultural, global wounds. We don't rush that process of healing, but the transformation is like that. If we are willing to ground, take our time, listen to the wisdom of the earth, be in our bodies where the heart lives, express that heart by bringing the fire of spirit to the hara, which heats these waters so we don't stay soggy in our wood, but express the water so the wood will be dry enough. And when we blow the air of consciousness there, fire catches, so the will of spirit is honored here. Slow down to speed up. The true warrior of awakening does not shake the sleeper awake. For when we shake the sleeper, they lose the dream that could have set us free. Rather, the warrior of awakening keeps the fire lit and warm so the dreamer can sleep and bring to us in their own pace, once they have rested, that vision intact to change the world. We are the dreamer. We are the awakening one. Let us be both at this time. Let us slow down so we can speed up. Love and planets to you, friends. See ya in space.